This is a part of all of us that we'll never forget. It'll always haunt us.
Bobby Jo Stinnett was butchered in this house.
She was strangled more than once.
The baby was cut from her stomach, and Bobby Jo slowly bled out.
Some killers break the law, but these women shatter all sense of humanity as they face their crimes with an ice-cold detachment. One case stands out, Keli Lane, whose story raises a chilling question. Did she take her newborn baby's life? Or was the truth buried beneath her endless web of lies? Let's dive in.
Turns out Lisa Montgomery was never pregnant. She was a killer who fed those around her a pack of lies, investigators, and even her husband. There was no birth. It was murder and kidnapping.
In December 2004, the small town of Skidmore, Missouri became the backdrop for one of the most harrowing crimes in modern history. Lisa Montgomery, a seemingly ordinary woman with a tragic past, would commit an act of unimaginable brutality. She wasn't just a killer. She was a predator hiding in plain sight, meticulously planning a crime so heinous that it shocked even seasoned investigators. Lisa's victim, Bobby Jo Stinnett, was a 23-year-old expecting mother whose kindness proved fatal. Montgomery had posed as a buyer interested in Bobby Jo's prized show dogs, gaining her trust through friendly emails and phone calls. But behind this facade was a calculated scheme. Lisa arrived at Bobby Jo's home under the guise of a meeting, carrying not excitement but sinister intent. With cold determination, Lisa attacked Bobby Jo, strangling her in a struggle that left the young woman fighting desperately for her life. But the horror didn't stop there.
Montgomery researched how to perform a C-section. She made a dry run to Skidmore the day before the murder. Montgomery brought umbilical cord clamps, a rope, and a knife to the Skidmore house.
Lisa used a kitchen knife to cut Bobby Jo's baby from her womb, leaving the young mother lifeless and the baby stolen. Her goal? To pass off the child as her own, an act fueled by years of lies about pregnancies and a desperate attempt to salvage her crumbling personal life.
I have no sympathy for Lisa Montgomery for what she did. That was the most monstrous act I can think of.
After fleeing the scene with the newborn, Lisa returned to Kansas, proudly displaying the baby to those around her. She concocted stories about giving birth herself, convincing even her husband of the falsehood. Meanwhile, Bobby Jo's lifeless body was discovered by her mother, who placed a frantic call to authorities. A massive manhunt ensued, with the FBI tracing Lisa's online communications to Bobby Jo. The following day, Lisa was arrested. The baby, miraculously unharmed, was safely returned to her father.
Diane and other advocates say Lisa Montgomery was brutally tortured throughout her life, beaten, and neglected.
In court, the details of Lisa's troubled life emerged. She had endured severe physical-emotional harm as a child, leaving deep psychological scars. Her defense team argued that these experiences, combined with mental health struggles, had driven her to commit such an atrocity. Despite these revelations, the jury was unmoved by her pleas. Lisa was convicted of kidnapping resulting in death, and in 2021, she became the first woman in nearly 7 decades to be executed by the federal government.
This case has finally come to a close, but we will never stop missing Bobby Jo. She was a sweet and loving wife, daughter, and sister, and would have been a wonderful mother.
The courtroom was heavy with grief and anger as Bobby Jo's family delivered their impact statements. Her mother, choking back tears, described the unimaginable pain of losing her daughter in such a brutal way. The judge, too, expressed his disgust at the calculated nature of Lisa's crime. Even in her final moments, Lisa displayed no remorse, maintaining a distant and detached demeanor, leaving those present to grapple with the monstrous act that tore a family apart. Breaking news! Evil Lives Here now has merch. Support the channel and grab your gear today. Check the link in the description. The next case takes us into a world of betrayal and manipulation. Sabrina Zunich, a foster child whose actions stunned her community.
17-year-old foster daughter Sabrina Zunich is on top of Lisa in a violent rage, stabbing the woman who gave her a new home.
What is going on? What is going on?
In the quiet suburb of Willoughby Hills, Ohio, a disturbing murder shattered the fragile trust between a foster child and her caregiver. Sabrina Zunich, a seemingly ordinary teenager, harbored a secret relationship with her foster father, Kevin Knafel, a relationship that would ultimately fuel a horrifying crime. What started as a rescue story for a troubled teen ended in a calculated plan to eliminate an innocent life.
It was, by all accounts, a stable and happy household. Lisa was a social worker who worked in the sex abuse department, while Kevin was often on the road as a trucker. It seemed like the perfect environment for a foster child.
Lisa Knaefel, Sabrina's foster mother, was known for her kind and nurturing nature. She welcomed Sabrina into her home, unaware of the darkness brewing behind closed doors. Kevin manipulated Sabrina, convincing her that Lisa was the source of their problems and the obstacle in their relationship. Under Kevin's influence, Sabrina's emotions spiraled, and the foster family's home became a battleground of betrayal and deceit. In the early morning hours of November 16, 2012, Sabrina entered Lisa's bedroom armed with a knife. Lisa, who was asleep beside her 3-year-old daughter, woke to the attack but had no chance against the ferocity of her assailant. Sabrina stabbed Lisa over 150 times, a horrifying act of violence that stunned even seasoned investigators. As investigators pieced together the crime, shocking details emerged. Sabrina confessed to the murder but claimed Kevin orchestrated the plan, manipulating her with promises of love and shared happiness. Phone records, texts, and testimony revealed Kevin's chilling role in grooming Sabrina for the murder, convincing her that this heinous act was the only way to secure their future together.
What was his relationship to you?
It was when a foster father when needed to be, and when a lover when not being a foster father.
The evidence painted a damning picture. Kevin had preyed on Sabrina's vulnerabilities, using her troubled past to mold her into a pawn for his twisted desires. The courtroom became a theater of anguish as Sabrina detailed Kevin's manipulation, and prosecutors argued that she was both victim and perpetrator in this horrifying tale.
Zunich told the jury that after Kevin Knaefel seduced her and began a sexual relationship with her, he convinced her to kill his wife so that he could collect $785,000 in insurance policies he had on Lisa Knaefel's life.
Sabrina Zunich pleaded guilty to aggravated murder, receiving a sentence of 30 years to life. Kevin Knaefel was convicted of conspiracy to commit aggravated murder and sentenced to life in prison, with no possibility of parole for 30 years. The legal system delivered justice, but the emotional scars left on Lisa's family and community would remain. The courtroom was a mix of raw emotion and quiet horror. Sabrina, visibly distraught during her sentencing, apologized to Lisa's family, but her words did little to heal the wounds inflicted by her actions. Lisa's surviving family members, including her young daughter, expressed their grief and anger, condemning Kevin's betrayal and Sabrina's ultimate choice to carry out the crime. The community, once a symbol of safety, was left to grapple with the reality that darkness can infiltrate even the most trusting of households. The case became a chilling reminder of the power of manipulation and the devastating consequences of unchecked control. Now, we shift focus to Karla Faye Tucker, whose brutal crime and unexpected transformation behind bars made her one of the most controversial figures in Texas history.
What are you going to be thinking about if you face execution?
I want to be thinking about certainly what it's like in heaven.
Of course, they rousted them out of bed, and of course the girl's screaming and pleading for her life, and both of them are. Karla just went crazy. I mean, she just went crazy.
In 1983, Karla Faye Tucker, a young woman with a troubled past, shocked Texas with a crime so brutal it left the public reeling. Known for her wild lifestyle fueled by substances and recklessness, Karla and her accomplice, Daniel Garrett, committed a gruesome double murder that would become one of the most infamous cases in the state's history. But what followed in her journey added an unexpected twist to her story. On a June night in Houston, Karla and Garrett broke into a home, driven by rage and a chaotic plan to steal a motorcycle. Inside, they encountered Jerry Lynn Dean, who Karla despised for personal reasons, and Deborah Thornton, who happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. Armed with a hammer and a pickaxe, the pair unleashed a savage attack. Karla herself would later admit to delivering the fatal blows to both victims, describing the act with chilling indifference.
She said that she basically achieved an orgasm every time she swung the pickaxe and landed it.
She told me that.
Do you believe that?
She told me that. I asked her that same question.
Adding to the horror, Karla claimed she felt a surge of joy during the crime, a statement that would haunt her trial and cement her image as a remorseless killer. For the victims' families, the sheer brutality was incomprehensible, leaving a void that could never be filled. The evidence against Karla was overwhelming. Fingerprints, witness testimonies, and her own confession painted a damning picture. Prosecutors described her as the epitome of evil, pointing to her lack of remorse during the trial. However, after being sentenced to death, something unexpected happened. While on death row, Karla claimed to have undergone a spiritual transformation, embracing Christianity and becoming a model inmate.
It took me a while to believe that Karla had found the Lord.
What mostly hit me was his love. His love that just...
Her public pleas for clemency sparked a global debate. Advocates, including prominent religious leaders, argued she had genuinely reformed and no longer posed a threat to society. But the victims' families and the state of Texas stood firm, believing that justice demanded her execution. On February 3, 1998, Carla Faye Tucker was executed by lethal injection, becoming the first woman to be put to death in Texas in over a century. In her final moments, Carla maintained her newfound faith, offering apologies to the victims' families and expressing hope for forgiveness. Her execution divided the nation, raising questions about the nature of redemption, justice, and whether true change is enough to outweigh past sins.
No, I'm not. I'm not afraid of dying. I mean, I know where I'm going. I know that Jesus has already gone to prepare a place for me. I know that if I have to go February 3rd, that he's going to come and he's going to escort me personally. I believe that.
The courtroom and public reactions to Carla's case were a mix of outrage and compassion. For some, her transformation was a testament to the possibility of redemption, even for those who commit unthinkable crimes. For others, her newfound faith couldn't erase the horrors of her actions or the devastation she caused. The victims' families remained steadfast, describing her death as a long overdue act of justice. Now let's turn our attention to Sheila LaBarre, a woman whose manipulative and violent tendencies turned her rural New Hampshire farm into a place of terror.
She's literally burning a body in her front yard.
Yes.
On a public roadway.
Yes. Yes.
Just whose remains are burning in that front yard fire? And is the woman who lives here a gold digger or a grave digger?
In the seemingly quiet town of Epping, New Hampshire, a picturesque farm concealed the horrifying reality of Sheila LaBarre's reign of terror. Her property, known to locals for its charm, became a house of horrors where young men entered but many never left. Behind her warm demeanor lurked a manipulative and sadistic killer, whose twisted motives would leave a community shattered. LaBarre's victims were carefully chosen, young, vulnerable men, often down on their luck, who were drawn to her through promises of care and stability. Once under her control, these men became prisoners in a psychological and physical nightmare. LaBarre used mental manipulation and harm to isolate her victims, making them dependent on her before subjugating them to unimaginable cruelty. She filmed her acts of torment, a chilling record of her ability to inflict pain without remorse. Among her victims was Kenneth County, a young man with developmental challenges. Lured by LaBarre's charm, he quickly found himself trapped in her web of sadistic violence. In 2006, neighbors began noticing strange bonfires on LaBarre's farm and a series of erratic behaviors that raised alarm bells. A concerned citizen contacted authorities, leading to a welfare check on her property. What police uncovered was beyond belief. They discovered evidence of violent assaults, including Kenneth County's blood-soaked mattress and personal belongings. LaBarre had already disposed of his body by burning it in one of her infamous fires. Further investigation revealed charred remains of multiple victims, each pointing to a grim pattern of harm, murder, and destruction. LaBarre accepted guilt, claiming her victims were pedophiles who deserved punishment, despite zero evidence supporting her assertions. Her unfounded justifications painted a chilling portrait of a killer detached from reality. LaBarre was arrested and charged with multiple counts of murder. Her trial exposed the depths of her depravity, as prosecutors detailed the torture her victims endured. Jurors were shown her self-incriminating videos, which highlighted her lack of empathy and enjoyment of control.
She had already admitted to the murders. Her sentence is mandatory.
I hereby sentence you to 2 life in prison without the possibility of parole sentences at the New Hampshire State Prison, and you are remanded to the custody of the sheriff.
In court, LaBarre appeared defiant and unapologetic, often smirking and showing no acknowledgement of the lives she destroyed. Her defense attempted to argue diminished capacity, pointing to her troubled childhood and history of mental illness. The jury rejected these claims, sentencing her to life in prison without parole. For the families of the victims, the trial offered little solace. They expressed profound anger and sorrow, speaking of the young lives robbed by LaBarre's cruelty. One relative described the farm as a death trap disguised as a sanctuary, a chilling metaphor for LaBarre's manipulative nature. Her lack of remorse only deepened the wounds, leaving a haunting reminder of the horrors hidden beneath her charming facade. Our next case takes us to Australia, where Keli Lane's web of lies and unsettling actions left a nation in disbelief.
Is Tegan Lane dead or alive? She was last seen as a 2-day-old leaving a Sydney hospital with her mother Keli, an aspiring Australian Olympian.
A former water polo champion with a seemingly perfect life, Keli Lane harbored a dark secret. Beneath her polished exterior lay a web of deception so intricate it would take years to unravel. The story of Lane's missing baby, Tegan, stunned Australia and revealed a chilling mystery that remains unsolved to this day. In 1996, Lane gave birth to her second child, Tegan, at Auburn Hospital in Sydney. Just 2 days later, the baby vanished without a trace. Lane initially claimed she had given Tegan to the child's biological father, but as police dug deeper, they uncovered a disturbing pattern. Lane had hidden multiple pregnancies from her family and friends, delivering babies in secret and placing them for adoption. However, Tegan's case was different. There was no record of adoption, no father stepping forward, and no explanation of where the infant had gone. As investigators pressed her for answers, Lane's story began to change. She provided conflicting accounts of Tegan's whereabouts, each more far-fetched than the last. Why would a mother go to such extreme lengths to hide the truth?
Did you kill the child?
No, I did not. I did not do anything like that.
In 2010, after years of suspicion and investigation, Lane stood trial for Tegan's murder. Prosecutors painted a chilling picture of a woman desperate to protect her image, willing to do anything to erase evidence of her secret child.
But I'm still not sure why you have to discuss. You asked me here to talk about Tegan. I'm confused now.
I want to get to the truth.
The courtroom was captivated as Lane's facade cracked under scrutiny. Witnesses described her obsession with maintaining appearances and her refusal to address Tegan's disappearance. The prosecution argued that Lane had killed Tegan shortly after leaving the hospital, driven by fear of her reputation being tarnished.
The natural father of the child is an Andrew Morris, is that correct?
That's correct.
But in a second interview more than 2 years later, she told them it could be Andrew Norris.
Lane maintained her innocence, repeatedly claiming she had handed Tegan over to the father, a man she refused to identify. But with no solid evidence of adoption and inconsistencies in her testimony, the jury had to confront the most unsettling possibility. Tegan was gone, and Keli Lane knew exactly why. Keli Lane was convicted of Tegan's murder and sentenced to 18 years in prison, with a non-parole period of 13 years. The verdict sent shockwaves across Australia, leaving a nation grappling with the horrifying reality of the case. Despite her conviction, Lane has continued to proclaim her innocence, even launching appeals to clear her name. The mystery of Tegan's disappearance lingers, haunting the minds of investigators, the public, and Tegan's biological father, whose identity remains a mystery. In court, Tegan's absence was obvious. There was no body, no tangible proof of her fate, only the aching void left behind by unanswered questions. Family members of Lane's other children expressed their anguish, struggling to reconcile the Keli Lane they knew with the woman convicted of such a heinous crime. The case serves as a stark reminder of how appearances can mask unthinkable acts. A mother's love should be unconditional, yet Tegan's story ended in darkness, with the truth buried alongside her. Next, we uncover the case of Lisa Dykes, whose role in a web of betrayal and violence left lasting scars and raised chilling questions about trust and deceit.
A woman on trial for killing a 23-year-old in a jealous rage may testify today.
Charges against 2 others in the case were dropped. Fox 4's Dan Godwin is live with the latest.
In October 2020, 23-year-old Maricela Botello traveled from Seattle to Dallas for a visit. But her trip took a tragic turn after a night out in Deep Ellum. She vanished, leaving her family and friends desperate for answers. Months later, her body was found in a rural area near Wilmer, Texas, marking the beginning of a harrowing investigation. The tragedy began months later, when investigators discovered her body in a remote area near Wilmer, Texas, unraveling a disturbing tale. The investigation led authorities to Lisa Dykes, her wife Nina Morano, and rapper Charles Beltran. Prosecutors revealed a tragic sequence of events, suggesting that Dykes, overcome by jealousy, attacked Maricela after finding her with Beltran.
Prosecutors say Dykes killed Botello in a jealous rage in October 2020 because she found Botello in bed with her boyfriend.
They claimed the situation escalated into a fatal confrontation. Evidence indicated that Dykes and Morano were working together to conceal the crime, disposing of Maricela's body in a desolate area. While Dykes and Morano were described as being in a unique relationship with Beltran, Dykes denied this, stating her ties to Beltran were limited to supporting his music career.
He says he somewhat lacked family stability, he did not graduate high school, and he was in and out of jail. Now, he says he did not commit this murder of Maricela Botello. He says he was just a witness.
Despite her claims, investigators found messages and GPS evidence connecting her to the crime scene. This heartbreaking case left Maricela's family grieving the loss of a beloved daughter and sister, while justice sought to bring closure to their pain. As the investigation unfolded, prosecutors presented a strong case against Lisa Dykes and Nina Morano. Using GPS data, they showed that both women had been near the rural area where 23-year-old Maricela Botello's body was later found. This evidence directly contradicted Dykes' claim that she and Morano were merely visiting a FedEx distribution center nearby. Adding to the puzzle, text messages and witness testimonies painted a troubling picture of the events leading up to Maricela's tragic death. Prosecutors argued that jealousy and anger had motivated Dykes' actions, providing further evidence to support their claims. In a dramatic twist, after their initial arrest, Dykes and Morano managed to disable their court-ordered ankle monitors and fled the country. They traveled to Cambodia, where they later claimed they were seeking a fresh start and felt unfairly treated. Their escape only heightened the tension surrounding the case, as it raised questions about their motives and accountability. Despite their efforts to evade justice, the legal system caught up with them, ensuring that the tragic loss of Maricela Botelho would not go unanswered. Her family continued to grieve her loss while seeking justice for the bright young woman taken too soon.
We, the jury, having heretofore found the defendant, Lisa Jo Dykes, guilty of the offense of murder as charged in the indictment.
After 7 days of testimony and only 90 minutes of jury deliberation, Lisa Dykes was found guilty of murder and tampering with evidence. Her wife, Nina Morano, faced separate charges for her involvement. Dykes showed no emotion as the verdict was read, maintaining her composure as Judge Nancy Mulder delivered the ruling. The prosecution highlighted Dykes' actions as a brutal betrayal of trust, while the defense argued that the evidence was circumstantial and the investigation flawed. But during the whole trial, Lisa didn't show any remorse.
Then dumped her body after she found the 23-year-old in bed with her boyfriend, Charles Beltran, Ms. Dykes' boyfriend, Charles Beltran. Maricela was visiting Dallas.
The aftermath of the trial brought a mix of relief and sorrow. Maricela Botelho's brother, Luis, delivered a heartfelt victim impact statement, sharing the pain of losing his sister. He said, "She is always taking care of us, despite us losing our sister, a beloved firstborn child, and a confidant." He described the profound impact her death had on their family, especially their mother, who continued to show resilience despite the tragedy.
Taking care of us despite of us losing our sister, their firstborn child. The fact that all of this happened, she hurt herself and my dad.
From a tale of jealousy and betrayal of a girlfriend, we move to a shocking crime that was fueled by a devastating mental health crisis.
She's accused of killing her boyfriend by stabbing him 108 times. And now there is fury over the fact that she has been spared jail time after the judge ruled she was not in control.
In May 2018, a tragic and shocking event unfolded in Thousand Oaks, California, when 32-year-old Bryn Spetcher fatally stabbed her boyfriend, Chad O'Melia, more than 100 times. What initially seemed like a brutal crime turned into a controversial legal battle surrounding mental health and substance-induced psychosis. Bryn and Chad had been dating for only a few weeks when tragedy struck on the night of May 27, 2018. The couple was spending time together at Chad's apartment in Thousand Oaks, California. They decided to smoke marijuana, a substance Bryn had little experience with. After her first attempt failed to produce any noticeable effect, Chad reportedly encouraged her to try another hit. What followed was a devastating turn of events. Bryn began to experience what experts later described as cannabis-induced psychotic disorder. She became disoriented, overwhelmed, and completely out of control. In a haze of confusion, Bryn grabbed a serrated bread knife and attacked Chad. By the time the police arrived, the scene was heart-wrenching. Chad lay motionless, and Bryn was holding the knife, hysterical and in shock. In her frenzied state, Bryn even turned the knife on herself, injuring her neck. Officers acted quickly, using a taser and batons to disarm and restrain her. Chad was pronounced dead at the scene, leaving his family and friends devastated. What began as a quiet evening turned into a moment of unimaginable sorrow, forever altering the lives of everyone involved. The tragic incident quickly gained global attention as Chad's loved ones called for justice, struggling to come to terms with the shocking loss. In the courtroom, prosecutors painted a grim and heartbreaking picture of the events that unfolded. They described the severity of the attack, highlighting the 108 stab wounds Chad suffered as a sign of overwhelming and uncontrollable anger. However, Bryn's defense offered a different perspective. They explained that her actions were not intentional, but rather the result of a rare mental health crisis. Experts testified that Bryn had experienced what is known as a cannabis-induced psychotic disorder, a condition triggered by her reaction to marijuana that night. They described how her mental state at the time left her unable to understand what was happening or control her actions.
And as I got closer to him, I saw the knife in my left hand stab his abdomen. And then it just went black.
The case left many torn. On one side, Chad's family sought accountability for the devastating loss of their son and brother. On the other hand, Bryn's legal team pleaded for understanding, emphasizing the role her mental health played in the tragedy. The courtroom became a place of emotional testimony and difficult questions, as everyone grappled with how such an unthinkable event could have happened. After years of legal proceedings, a jury convicted Bryn of involuntary manslaughter. In January 2024, Judge David Worley sentenced her to 2 years of probation and 100 hours of community service instead of prison. This decision, which acknowledged her cannabis-induced psychosis, sparked strong reactions. Chad's father, Sean O'Melia, voiced his outrage, claiming the ruling set a dangerous precedent, saying, "He just gave everyone in the state of California who smokes marijuana a license to kill someone."
I'm just so sorry that he went through that pain.
Yeah, it's
I don't know.
It's a lot. It's a lot.
In her testimony, that everything was about her.
Bryn and her family wept in relief after the judge's decision, while Chad's loved ones were left devastated, feeling justice had not been served. The public also went on roads for justice. The case highlighted the complex interplay between mental health, substance use, and criminal responsibility, leaving the community divided over whether Bryn's punishment fit her crime.
Bryn moved to Los Angeles to start her career as an audiologist, her hearing service dog, Aria, by her side. The two spent much of their free time.
Bryn's case highlights the complexities of mental health and justice. The next case shows how volatile relationships spiraled into tragedy.
Loved each other deeply, and they fought with the same level of intensity. And when one of them ends up dead, police have to decide if it was self-defense or premeditated murder.
On a quiet September night in 2015, Kaylee Whitehall and her boyfriend, Custon Johnson, were embroiled in a heated argument at their shared home in Kentucky. The confrontation would end in tragedy, leading to a criminal case that captivated the community and revealed the dark undercurrents of a troubled relationship. The argument began when Custon Johnson learned that Kaylee Whitehall planned to leave him. What started as a heated exchange quickly escalated into chaos, with their disagreements spreading throughout the house. Witnesses later described a tumultuous scene where emotions ran high. During the altercation, Johnson reportedly placed Whitehall in a headlock, attempting to control the situation. In response, Whitehall threw objects in an effort to free herself. The tension mounted as the conflict continued to spiral out of control.
I couldn't breathe and I felt like I was scared.
Amid the confusion, Whitehall made a critical decision. She grabbed a knife and returned to confront Johnson in the bedroom. What happened next changed both of their lives forever. In the midst of the struggle, Whitehall stabbed Johnson. Wounded and disoriented, Johnson managed to make his way to the bathroom, but his injuries were too severe. He collapsed near the shower, unable to recover from the damage inflicted. Tragically, his life slipped away shortly after. The devastating moment marked the tragic end of their relationship and set the stage for a courtroom battle that would later determine Whitehall's fate. It was a heartbreaking reminder of how conflicts can escalate with irreversible consequences. In the midst of the dispute, Whitehall stabbed Johnson. Injured and bleeding, he stumbled into the bathroom, collapsing near the shower. Tragically, Johnson succumbed to his wounds shortly after. The case reached the courtroom in September 2015, as the tragic events of that fateful day were laid bare before a jury. Prosecutors described the incident as an act of reckless violence, pushing back against Whitehall's claim of self-defense. Brittany Jones, a key witness, shared her account of what happened. She explained how she tried to step in and separate the couple during their heated argument, but was unable to calm the situation. She also testified to seeing Whitehall pick up a knife and return to the bedroom where Johnson was, a moment that would later prove pivotal in the case. Prosecutor Kim Gogegan presented a strong argument, emphasizing that Whitehall's actions didn't align with a narrative of self-defense. Detectives who investigated the crime scene further strengthened the prosecution's case. They revealed that the evidence contradicted Whitehall's initial claim of stabbing Johnson in the kitchen while he was holding her. Instead, the findings pointed to the fatal act occurring in the bedroom.
I've never been in any situation like this. I don't do anything. I've never been arrested. I go to work every day. I'm like a supervisor. I'm a sure. My life is perfect.
The jury listened carefully to these details, piecing together the story of what had happened. It was a tragic moment that left the courtroom grappling with questions of accountability and the choices that led to such a devastating outcome. After a 3-day trial, the jury found Whitehall guilty of reckless homicide. On November 7th, Warren Circuit Judge Steve Wilson upheld their recommendation of a 4-year sentence. Whitehall, who had remained stoic throughout the trial, returned to custody to continue serving her time at the Warren County Regional Jail.
Penalty. We, the jury, fixed the defendant's sentence of reckless homicide.
Under the terms of her sentence, Whitehall is eligible for parole after serving 15% of her term, which means she could be released as early as March. This case brought heartbreak to both families involved and served as a stark reminder of how quickly domestic disputes can escalate into irreversible tragedies. Prosecutors argued that Johnson's life ended senselessly, while Whitehall maintained her actions stemmed from fear. Kaylee Whitehall's tragic crime leads to a heartbreaking loss, Next is a mysterious death that has sparked allegations of conspiracy.
And the Massachusetts Supreme Court is weighing arguments over whether to dismiss Karen Reed's murder charges. Reed is accused of hitting her police officer boyfriend with her SUV and leaving him to die.
Karen Reed stands accused of killing her police officer boyfriend, John O'Keefe, in a mysterious and tragic incident. O'Keefe, a Boston police officer with a 16-year career, was found dead in the front yard of another officer's house in January 2022. Reed, his girlfriend, has claimed her innocence, alleging that law enforcement is trying to frame her for his death. The case took an unexpected twist when a 9-week trial ended in a mistrial because the jury couldn't agree on a verdict. Karen Reed faced serious charges, including second-degree murder, motor vehicle manslaughter, and leaving the scene of a deadly accident. The prosecution was determined to try again, pledging to retry Reed for her role in the tragic death of her boyfriend, Boston police officer John O'Keefe.
They arrived at the victim's home. The defendant had Ms. McCabe looked at that same cracked taillight. Ms. McCabe described the passenger side right rear taillight as cracked.
However, Reed's defense team argued that she was being unfairly accused. They claimed that law enforcement officers, some of whom were closely connected to the victim, were involved in a conspiracy to frame her for his death. The defense painted a picture of a complicated situation, suggesting that there were many unanswered questions surrounding O'Keefe's death, and that Reed's actions had been misunderstood.
To move her murder retrial to a later date. Reed is charged in connection with the death of her boyfriend, Boston police officer John O'Keefe.
As the case continues, the mystery deepens, with both sides presenting strong arguments. Reed insists she's innocent and is determined to clear her name, while O'Keefe's family and friends search for justice. The courtroom remains a place of tension as everyone hopes the truth will eventually come to light and bring resolution to this heartbreaking situation. The night of John O'Keefe's death started like any other, but tension had been growing in his relationship with Karen Reed. After a disagreement at a bar, Reed dropped O'Keefe off at an after-party, unaware that this would be their last night together. The next morning, Reed discovered his body outside the home of Brian Albert, a retired Boston police sergeant.
And I would note, the Commonwealth's characterization of that interview is incorrect and incomplete. I submitted additional reporting from Boston 25.
Investigators found clues linking Reed's vehicle to the scene, including a broken taillight and traces of O'Keefe's DNA on the car. The evidence suggested that Reed's SUV might have been involved in the incident, raising questions about what happened that night. However, Reed's defense team argued that O'Keefe's death could have been the result of a violent altercation at the after-party. They suggested that other people at the gathering, including Albert and his family, might have played a role. During the whole trial, Karen was just smiling as she knew that everything would be in his favor.
The judge denied the defense request to bring the jurors back to court to find out if they actually reached verdicts on those 2 counts. And now the Massachusetts Supreme Court will make a decision.
The defense painted a picture of a chaotic situation where the truth was unclear and no one really knew what had happened. As the investigation continues, the search for answers grows more complicated, with both sides trying to piece together the events leading up to that fateful morning. Despite the evidence presented by the prosecution, Reed's defense argued that the investigation was biased, particularly due to the close relationships between some of the key figures involved, including Albert's ties to law enforcement.
The sneaker was completely buried. It wasn't until we started digging through the snow that we found the sneaker.
Was a clear piece of plastic found a few feet south?
They claimed that Reed was unfairly targeted as a suspect. The judge denied a request to dismiss the charges, and a retrial has been scheduled for April 1st. Throughout the trial, Reed maintained her innocence, while O'Keefe's family and friends sought justice for his death. The case has left many questioning whether the right person is on trial, and whether justice can truly be served in such a complicated and emotionally charged situation.
You alone determine what evidence to believe. You determine the facts of this case.
The next case takes us to Melanie Lynn McGuire, whose story unravels a chilling account of calculated murder and a trail of shocking evidence that left investigators and the public reeling.
The latest and third suitcase containing human remains was brought ashore Sunday. Police got a tip from a recreational boater about its location in the water near the second island of the Chesapeake Bay Bridge Tunnel.
In 2004, Melanie Lynn McGuire was living what seemed to be an idyllic life. A nurse and mother, she appeared to have everything together. But behind closed doors, her marriage to William Bill McGuire was unraveling. What started as marital discord would escalate into a chilling case that horrified an entire community.
His name was Bill McGuire.
He was a husband, a father of 2 young boys. He had 2 sisters.
The victim of a vicious crime.
It literally appeared as if though
his body was cut to fit these suitcases.
On April 28, 2004, Bill McGuire vanished without warning. His disappearance puzzled friends and family, but the situation turned sinister days later when a suitcase washed ashore in Virginia. Inside were Bill's dismembered remains. The gruesome discovery would soon lead investigators to Melanie, whose actions revealed a cold and calculated murder.
There were different parts of the body. So in one suitcase, there was kind of a torso with the arms and head still attached. In the second suitcase, there was the pelvis area, and in the third suitcase, there was really the legs down.
Bill's body was found in 3 separate suitcases scattered across the Chesapeake Bay, each containing a horrifying piece of the puzzle. Melanie claimed her husband had left after an argument, but investigators discovered she had purchased a gun just days before Bill disappeared. Evidence of large garbage bags, cleaning supplies, and receipts tied Melanie to the crime, further unraveling her carefully crafted story.
The woman who was on trial for her very life. She says the real truth behind the crime has never been revealed.
With no history of violence and no apparent motive for murder.
Prosecutors argued that Melanie had drugged Bill, shot him twice, and dismembered his body to cover her tracks. The motive? To end her marriage and pursue a new life with her lover, a doctor she worked with.
Melanie McGuire, nicknamed the Suitcase Killer.
On April 23rd, 2007, I was convicted of the murder and dismemberment of my husband.
In the courtroom, the prosecution laid out a chilling narrative supported by forensic evidence. Fibers found in the suitcase matched those in Melanie's home. Surveillance footage and financial records revealed the purchase of supplies used to commit and conceal the crime. Throughout the trial, Melanie sat with an eerie calm, denying all accusations. Her composed demeanor contrasted with the shocking evidence, leaving the jury and those in the courtroom unsettled.
Guilty.
How do you find this? At the count of the indictment charging Melanie McGuire with desecrating human remains between on or about April 28, 2004 and on or about May 5, 2004 in the township of Woodbridge, Middlesex County, New Jersey, elsewhere and within the jurisdiction of this court.
Guilty.
After a grueling trial, the jury delivered a swift verdict, guilty of first-degree murder. Melanie Lynn McGuire was sentenced to life in prison without parole in 2007. Bill's family described the immense pain of losing him in such a horrific way, but they found solace in knowing justice had been served.
In this case, the crime was so heinous, so cruel, and so depraved that the court finds that the maximum sentence should be imposed.
Inside the courtroom, the pain of the victim's family was unmistakable as they listened to the horrific details of what happened to William McGuire. Tearful statements from loved ones painted a picture of a man who was full of life and deeply missed. But it was Melanie's demeanor that drew the most attention.
When I remember my uncle, the first thing I see is a waterlogged suitcase. All we can ask is that you take her freedom as she took our Billy.
Throughout the trial, she maintained an air of calmness, almost eerily composed, even as prosecutors laid out damning evidence. There were moments when she appeared to scribble notes, her expression unreadable, as if detached from the devastating consequences of her actions.
Or about April 26, 2004, and on or about May 5, 2004, in the township of Woodbridge, Middlesex County, New Jersey, elsewhere and within the jurisdiction of this court.
Guilty.
During her sentencing, Melanie's composure cracked just slightly. She shook her head and whispered to her attorney, still insisting on her innocence. While the judge delivered the life sentence, she avoided looking directly at the victim's family, her eyes fixed downward. It was a moment that underscored her refusal to accept responsibility, leaving those in attendance with a haunting impression of a woman incapable of remorse. Next, we turn to the unsettling case of Iloma Curry Walker, whose actions revealed a chilling disregard for life.
The coward who did this will be caught. I am not afraid of anything. Don't get it twisted. But what happened here is outrageous, past outrageous. My prayers, my heart, my soul go out to his wife and his children. For them to lose such a loving person that I'm hearing of.
In the quiet hours of Cleveland, Ohio, a firefighter's life of service and love was cut short in a betrayal that shocked the community. William Walker, a beloved veteran firefighter, was gunned down just steps away from the home he shared with his new wife, Iloma Curry Walker. What initially seemed like a robbery gone wrong turned out to be something far darker. A calculated act of greed orchestrated by the person he trusted most.
10 years ago this month, Cleveland firefighter Lieutenant William Walker was killed, shot in the driveway of his home in what authorities would learn was a murder-for-hire plot concocted by his wife.
At first, William Walker's murder left investigators puzzled. The 45-year-old firefighter had no known enemies, and his dedication to his family and community made the crime seem senseless. But beneath the surface, Aloma Curry Walker had been living a lie. Drowning in debt and desperate to find a way out, she devised a chilling plan. Just 4 months after marrying William, she plotted his murder to claim his $100,000 life insurance policy, viewing his life as a way to erase her financial troubles. Aloma approached her 17-year-old daughter and her daughter's boyfriend, Chad Paget, to help recruit the hitman. Chad in turn enlisted Chris Hine, a young acquaintance. For Aloma, this wasn't just about money. It was about manipulation, using everyone around her to achieve her sinister goal.
November 3rd, 2013, Walker was shot multiple times in his driveway. He didn't make it.
I actually worked at Metro Hospital in the ER, and Will was my patient. So I knew he was coming in when I heard that he was shot.
On November 3rd, 2013, Aloma's plan came to fruition. William had returned home after a long day of work when Chris Hine ambushed him outside his garage and shot him multiple times. The neighborhood was rocked by the sound of gunfire, and police quickly arrived on the scene. Aloma's act began to unravel almost immediately. She played the grieving widow, but quickly raised suspicion with her calm demeanor and inconsistent stories. Investigators discovered that William's life insurance policy still listed his ex-wife as the beneficiary, meaning Aloma stood to gain nothing from the murder. As detectives dug deeper, they uncovered damning evidence. Chad Paget confessed to his role, exposing the web of manipulation Aloma had spun. Text messages and testimonies revealed her attempts to orchestrate the crime and silence those involved.
Monday, Cuyahoga County Prosecutor Tim McGinty announced that a total of 5 people were involved in killing him in what he calls a murder for hire, orchestrated by his wife, Uloma Walker Curry. Investigators say Uloma was committing financial fraud in his name. They say she was afraid he might find out what she was doing and assumed she could use his life insurance to pay debts.
98191, codefendant D, Uloma Curry. Codefendant is pending on the docket.
Do you have an attorney? Do you have any money or funds to hire an attorney?
In 2017, Aloma Curry Walker was brought to trial. The courtroom was gripped with tension as the prosecution laid out the horrifying details of the case. Testimonies from her daughter and Chad Paget painted a chilling picture of her willingness to exploit even her own family. After just 2 hours of deliberation, the jury delivered their verdict: guilty of aggravated murder, conspiracy, and other charges. The judge didn't hold back during sentencing, condemning Aloma for her cold, calculated actions. She was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole.
And so we are just shocked and distraught. My father did not deserve this at all. He was such a great man, a great role model.
He was a great man, a great father, a great firefighter, a great partner. We worked together on the same fire trucks a lot.
Brian Webb remembers him as the guy who could cheer you up and make you laugh after a tough call.
I'm just really hurt to know that my mother was able to do something like this. It's just so upsetting. It's so sad.
In the courtroom, William's family broke down as the verdict was read, struggling to comprehend how someone he loved could betray him so completely. His colleagues from the fire department described him as a selfless hero, a man who dedicated his life to saving others, only to have his own life stolen in such a brutal way. Aloma, however, showed no remorse. Her blank expression as the sentencing was announced sent chills through the courtroom, a stark contrast to the tears and heartbreak of William's loved ones. Up next, we shift to the unsettling case of Kelly Cochran, whose chilling actions left a path of destruction and raised disturbing questions about her true intentions.
When you look into the eyes of the so-called devil woman of Michigan, what do you see?
I see exactly what I saw from the very beginning. She's one of the most manipulative people that you'll ever meet. Her and her husband had entered into this agreement on their wedding night that if one had an affair on the other, that it was their responsibility to kill the person that they had the affair with.
On the surface, Kelly Cochran appeared to live an ordinary life in Michigan with her husband, Jason Cochran. But behind closed doors, their relationship was far from typical. The couple had made a dark and chilling pact. If one of them ever cheated, they would be forced to murder the lover. This twisted agreement would set the stage for a crime so horrifying it left investigators struggling to piece together the depths of Keli's cruelty.
As soon as you walk into the house, the hair stands up on the back of your neck.
Something happened to him. I knew that in my heart.
Keli wore the pants in the family, so whatever she wanted, Jason did.
In October 2014, Chris Regan, a 53-year-old co-worker and lover of Keli Cochran, mysteriously vanished in Michigan's Upper Peninsula. He had been preparing to move out of town when he suddenly disappeared without a trace. When police began investigating, they found Chris's car abandoned at a park-and-ride lot. Inside, there was a sticky note with directions to Keli Cochran's home, immediately placing her at the center of suspicion.
I actually was institutionalized a little over a month ago.
What happened to Chris?
With her, it was like lie, truth.
Keli initially denied any involvement, insisting she knew nothing about Chris's whereabouts. But her behavior raised red flags. As investigators delved deeper, they discovered that Keli and Jason Cochran had lured Chris to their home under the guise of a romantic evening, only to brutally ambush him. Jason shot Chris with a rifle, carrying out the deadly agreement while Keli stood by.
Chris Regan went missing in Michigan's Upper Peninsula in October 2014. The investigation into his disappearance went nowhere. Cochran and her husband Jason had been questioned, but not arrested.
What began as a pact to punish infidelity soon spiraled into a nightmarish cover-up. The couple dismembered Chris's body, disposing of his remains in the rugged wilderness of Michigan's Upper Peninsula. Despite their efforts, Keli's mounting inconsistencies and the evidence pointing to her involvement kept the police closing in.
Shortly after the couple moved back to Northwest Indiana, when Jason Cochran died from an apparent heroin overdose, that the pieces began to fall into place.
After years of suspicion, Keli's world began to unravel. In 2016, Jason Cochran was found dead in their home in Indiana, reportedly from a heroin overdose. But Jason's family believed otherwise, and an autopsy revealed that his death was intentional. Keli had injected him with a lethal dose, silencing him permanently and ending their dark partnership.
Whom she said her now dead husband had killed, then with her help dismembered. She even led investigators to where they dumped the remains.
Out in that area?
A little to the right and back towards us a little.
Now a widow, Keli fled the area, but authorities soon caught up with her. During questioning, she made stunning confessions, admitting not only to Jason's murder, but also to helping plan and carry out Chris Regan's killing. She even claimed to have killed multiple other victims, though these confessions have never been fully substantiated.
Convicted murderer Keli Cochran was sentenced to life in prison without a chance of parole this morning. Cochran was found guilty of first-degree murder, aiding and abetting, along with 4 other felony charges in late February.
In 2017, Keli Cochran was convicted of Chris Regan's murder and sentenced to life in prison without parole. She was also found guilty of Jason Cochran's death, adding another 65 years to her sentence. Prosecutors described her as manipulative, calculating, and devoid of remorse. A woman who not only orchestrated brutal crimes, but reveled in the chaos she left behind.
Do you have a conscience? Have you always felt this way?
I've always been like this, man.
Keli's chilling goodbye letters, written shortly before her arrest, hinted at her complete detachment from reality. She referred to herself as a devil in human form, leaving no doubt about the darkness within her.
Everybody just cried, and Chris's family was sitting right behind me, and the first thing I did is just turn around and hug them.
In the courtroom, Chris Regan's loved ones sat in stunned silence as Keli detailed the events leading to his death. The descriptions of her betrayal and brutality were almost too much to bear. Jason Cochran's family, still grappling with his murder, expressed their grief over being deceived by Keli's manipulative persona.
If he would have never met me, he'd be here today.
35-year-old Keli Cochran will never again walk free, convicted of killing her lover and then her husband.
Keli's demeanor during her trial was cold and emotionless, leaving those in attendance shaken by her lack of humanity. Her statements about having more victims further horrified everyone, cementing her reputation as one of the most chilling killers to stand trial. Now we turn to the case of Nikki Sue Enzel, a woman whose disturbing crime left a lasting impact on those closest to her and continues to haunt those who heard her story.
Nikki Sue Melissa Enzel. Conspiracy to commit murder. As to the charge of conspiracy to commit murder, we find the defendant Nikki Sue Melissa Enzel guilty.
It was not enough that Nikki Sue Enzel was already cheating on her husband. She had to make matters worse by having him killed. On January 2nd, 2020, a frantic 911 call came in. Nikki Sue came home to find that her house was on fire. She said that she was scared that her husband was trapped inside. According to Nikki, she'd been away from home for a few days when she got a call from her husband's coworker, who said he hadn't been to work for a few days.
I came out here to check. My husband sent a text message that he didn't come in today, and I've been good 3 days, and so I'm coming here to check. And I walk in, I open the back door, and I walk in, and the house is smoky. I can't get in the door. It's smoky in the house.
When firefighters got to the scene, they found the body of 42-year-old Chad Ensel inside his bedroom. He was pronounced dead, and an autopsy was carried out. It was soon revealed that the fire was not what killed Chad. He had been shot multiple times by a shotgun. At first, investigators believed that he had committed suicide and that the house fire was caused by a propane heater. Another investigation revealed that Chad couldn't have committed suicide, and that's when the story that Nikki gave began to crumble. The gun was found near the bed and not near Chad on the floor. It was also revealed that the fire had been deliberate after the accelerant was found in the bedroom. At first, no one really suspected Nikki. That was until security footage showed Nikki with a man in multiple places over their area. It was then revealed that this was Earl Howard, Nikki's lover.
Show that Nikki Sue Ensel and Earl Howard agreed to kill Chad Ensel, agreed to set the house on fire, to collect the insurance benefits and to cover up the murder, and agreed to tamper with evidence by destroying or disposing of that second shotgun shell and setting the fire to cover up the evidence of the murder.
Nikki had been in an affair with Earl for a while before deciding to go see him in the motel. While she denied that she hadn't been back to the house before the fire, CCTV footage soon showed otherwise. After constant interrogation, Nikki claimed that Howard was the one who shot Chad while they were struggling over the gun. She said she waited in the car. Her story changed again when she claimed that she had never seen Howard before. Despite this, prosecutors did not believe her. Howard, on the other hand, said that Nikki had shot her husband and that he offered to set the house on fire to burn evidence. Prosecutors argued that they planned to kill him and run away with his insurance money. Nikki was charged with conspiracy to commit arson, conspiracy to commit murder, and conspiracy to tamper with physical evidence. In February 2023, she was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole. In court, she tried to appeal her sentence.
I get told I need to take a plea deal. It's going to be this way. I don't want to. I want to have my chance.
Her appeal was dismissed, and she is serving her sentence in North Dakota. Howard ended up pleading guilty to various charges, including conspiracy to commit murder and arson. In making the plea deal, prosecutors agreed to drop a murder charge. He was sentenced to 25 years in prison in February 2022. The chilling actions of these women reveal how far some will go when consumed by darkness, and their lack of remorse only amplifies the horror. But there are even more cases waiting to be uncovered. The next video on screen delves into killers whose crimes shook entire communities and left the world grappling with the depths of human evil. Keep watching.